Hello, hello, everyone. We are just waiting for people to come in to the waiting room. We've already got a bunch of you in here. I'm sure a few more will trickle in. We're gonna give everybody a second to join. But I could not. I feel like I said this in the last masterclass I did, but honestly, I could not be more excited. I could not be more excited for this class. Language learning is something that has become a true hobby of mine, like a true hobby. And it's something that I'm passionate about. It's something that I really enjoy. And so being able to share what I have learned is really exciting to me. It just is. It really, really is. I am just a little bit of background. I will go into this once we start the full presentation and all of that. But I was an Italian teacher for 2 years. I'm not a native Italian speaker. I learned Italian, taught other people Italian. I've taught English. I'm now studying Korean, started doing that by myself. And I'm just having a great, great time. So I'm going to give it, it's not even 4 yet. We're going to give it a couple of more minutes to let people come in. Already have 12 of you in here. I would love to know from you guys, why are you here? Go ahead and drop in the chat. I really like to keep, if you've not been in one of my lives before, I really like to keep it chill. I really like to keep it interactive. I like to keep it fun. So I would love to know, why do you guys want to learn a language? What language do you want to learn? I'm assuming for most of you, it's probably Korean, given that you're all in the, my Instagram page is mostly about learning Korean. But let me know in the chat what it is that you guys are wanting to learn. I'd love to know. Let's see who else is, wow. Lots of people coming in, lots of people coming in. Lots of people coming in. Also, if everybody, I'm going to go through and mute people as I see them come in. But if you guys could put yourselves on mute just to make sure that there's no like background noise or car alarms going off, whatever. Korean and German. Ooh, want to learn 2 languages. Just arrived in Seoul, and so I would like to learn the language better. Yeah, that's a pretty solid reason, in my opinion. The list of languages I want to learn is long. I'm holding myself back from starting another because I want to get a little bit more of a solid grasp on Korean before I learn another. But I want to learn Arabic, Japanese, Chinese, French. I've got to fix my Spanish. My Spanish is pretty bad. It's not bad. I'm like intermediate, but I've never actually studied it. Let's see. We've got Korean, Arabic, Spanish. Got in because of K-pop. I can guarantee you're not alone because I also got in here because of K-pop. Alphabet and culture, trying to learn Mandarin and Japanese too. Look at you go. Look at you go. Okay. Korean, Arabic, and Spanish. I want to learn Korean, but the issue is mostly grammar. We're going to talk about that today. Wow, a lot of language. I have 8. That's like goals. Right now, Korean and Spanish, Korean, Chinese, Spanish, French, and German. Arab, guys, I feel like I found my people. I have found my people. Where have you all been my whole life? You guys are the ones I want to hang out with. Want to learn Korean because you want to move there. That's a great point, Katie. I'm glad that you brought that up because a lot of people, again, my page is mostly Korean, so you may hear me reference that most, but everything I teach tonight will apply to all languages. But if you want to move to Korea, yes, it's possible if you just know English or you want to teach English. But honestly, if you know Korean, your like options are multiplied tenfold. So why not give yourself that as many options as you can? Traveling to Korea next year, really want to learn. I'm Swedish, living in Stockholm. Swedish is one of my, basically every language is one of the languages that's on my list. I just have to pick the ones at the top. Okay, I think, yeah, okay. People are still trickling in. I'm going to try and get them in as we go. Again, everybody, just don't forget, if you can, to put yourself on mute. I'll go through and mute you if anything comes up. But let's dive in. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Can you guys all see this okay? Did it come across? Okay. Awesome. Thank you for the nods. Guys, ta-da! How to learn any language. I'm really happy because I think it looks pretty. Art is not a strength of mine or anybody in my family, so the colors match. I was already feeling like a winner from the get-go. Let's dive in. Okay, so, oh, my picture. All right, well, we can't win everything. This was supposed to be a picture of me. My name is Dana. For those of you who don't know, I've already given a bit of an introduction while we were just kind of chatting, waiting for everybody to join. I know 2.5 languages. If we kind of add up my half Spanish and half Korean, I know Italian. English is my native language. Spanish I picked up on accident by immersion when I was teaching English there. And I started learning Korean during the pandemic. And who knew? Now I'm in Korea learning it full time. What a shocker. Nobody saw that coming, not even me. I also just think it's good to know, like, I'm a normal person. You're never going to see me show up on Instagram like looking all perfect. If I ever do look perfect, it will be posted on Instagram, but those instances are rare. They are rare. So I'm just a normal person. I love K-pop. I love cake. I love going on walks. I love traveling. I worked on Wall Street for 4 years or so before getting laid off. And I decided what a perfect time to come and turn this little hobby of mine into more of a not full-time, but more of a real thing. And I just want to say, I try and say this on my stories and as much as I can, but you can never say it enough. I so appreciate everyone being here. Like, having this community of, like I said, I feel like I found my people. I feel like we can all learn together, grow together, encourage each other. And I know that learning a language can be daunting, but anybody can do it. You may have different speeds. Some things may come easier for someone than someone else. That is not an indication of anything about you or anything about them. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. And honestly, I think as a world, we would all be a little better off if we were just a little more supportive of each other's strengths and each other's weaknesses. So I'm grateful for you that you're here. And yeah, let's dive in. You may see me pause. People are still coming in to the meeting. A few people even DM'd me and said work meetings came up. They need to join a little bit late. So you may see me pause every now and again. And also, if you see me look at my phone, I'm looking at notes. I need them. Sometimes I forget things. And sometimes I ramble. Keeps me on track. Okay, so here's what we're going to go over today. The first thing is going to be mindset, because I think this is what I can almost feel the mindset. This is, I think, what keeps people from actually being successful in learning a language. It's the consistency and it's the motivation, right? We all kind of know what we need to do, but actually doing it. If we all did what we knew we needed to do, we'd have the healthiest bodies, we'd have a perfect sleep schedule, our jobs would be perfect. Not as easy. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then we're going to talk about like the actual nitty-gritty skills of learning a language. And I'm talking about like all language is made up of certain components, right? The alphabet, pronunciation, grammar, speaking, writing, reading, listening, all of that stuff. We are going to go through, and I have not only taught this stuff before, like professionally, but I have read books on this topic. I have watched YouTube videos and TED Talks and all things about languages because I've always been passionate about languages. So we're going to talk about some of the most effective ways to actually learn languages so that you can do it by yourself. And then we're going to talk about study plans, because again, I'm going to give you a lot of information. And it doesn't do me a lot of good if I give you a lot of information without any actual way to implement it, right? This is like a bomb class. Like, I'm so excited. And to somebody who asked, will there be a recording? 100% there will be a recording. Also, let me say, this is being recorded, so let's not do anything that will go viral for all of the wrong reasons on the internet, if you know what I mean. Let's all keep this civil and appropriate. Okay. So again, I want to say, so many of you may be coming here stressed, overwhelmed, feeling like a failure, feeling, oh, I'm so dumb. I can't learn a language, right? I want to so flip that switch, right? That is not true for any of you. If you have failed before, great. You know what doesn't work for you. You know what doesn't work for you. You are already starting from a place of, great, I can take this information and I can move forward. Oops, sorry guys, that was me trying to add someone into the room. That is so essential, right? You can do it now, right? A lot of times there's not a lot of information about how to learn languages, because most of the time when we're a kid, we just kind of learn it, or we learn it in school over like 10 years, right? And even when we learn it in school, I think we all have had like Spanish classes, English classes, whatever your non-native language is. We've all had those classes and then gone on vacation to that country and been like, well, those were useless. I learned nothing in them because you can't speak, right? So we're going to talk about all of this, okay? So let me know if any of this sounds like you, right? You've been too intimidated to even start learning a language. You don't even know where to start, even if you weren't intimidated. You've tried to learn a language before, but you have no idea what you're doing, so you've never made much progress. Or you're just new to learning a language and you want to set yourself up for success. That is totally normal. Again, I want to kind of give everybody a chance to feel supported. Drop like the number in the chat if you've ever thought or felt any of these things, so that we all know, like, nobody here is dumb. Nobody here is stupid. Nobody here is any of those things. 2, yes, no idea what you're doing, so you've never made any progress. I have also been there. Most of my language learning was done in like a structured setting or like full immersion. I didn't know what I was doing when I started learning Korean. All of a sudden, I was supposed to like memorize vocab, but then do what with it? That's when I started reading the books and watching the podcast, listening to podcasts and watching the YouTube videos. I've been trying to learn Korean since 2017 with tiny progress. Hey, guess what? Tiny progress is still progress. 3, all right. Aya, you're new to language learning. 1, too intimidated to even start. All right, guys, see? All of us, nobody's alone. It's okay. 1 and 2, we've got lots of 2s, 3s, 2, 3. I'm right there with you. I've been there. So, okay, before I click the next slide, I just want to say this in and of itself is an all-encompassing class, right? I am going to, at the end, when this is recorded, I'm going to send you guys the recording, obviously, but you guys are also going to get access to the 1,000 most common words in Korean list. It's a list of words. Let's not get overly excited here. It's a list of words in a Notion template that you can check off the ones you know. It has the translation and the parts of speech and all of that. So that will be coming your way. Also, again, this is for those of you who are interested. This will be an all-encompassing class. It's not needed. I like to be helpful, so I give everything away for free. But there's also going to be an e-guide. When I did my last session on visas, everybody talked about how they wanted a book that they could keep and mark up and stuff like that. So that will be coming as well. I thought that I would finish it in time. It's not finished. I just have to reread it. and fix all my spelling errors. But so what I decided to do was like, oh, brilliant opportunity. There's going to be a pre-sale and it's going to be discounted 25% off, but it's basically going to be everything we talk about today and also everything that I couldn't fit in today's class, because I assume everybody has better things to do than spend like 8 hours with me. I mean, I think I'm really fun, but that's a lot of time commitment that nobody signed up for. So there'll be additional things in there, hyperlinked resources, memorization techniques, how to find a language partner, how to set expectations with a language partner. Hey, Anna, how are you? All of those extra things will be in there. And what else do I need to say about that? Oh, and this is true for anything that you purchase from me ever. Again, I do my Instagram because it's fun, but like, let's be real, who doesn't also want to make a little money when they can? Anything that you ever buy from me, any updates, you will always get for free. So it's not like you're like, oh, buy it now, but it's going to be better 2 years. It's not an iPhone. You don't need to keep buying it over and over again. You buy it once and then you will just get the updates. It's software, not the actual device. Okay. You just got to update. So let's move on and dive in. Okay. This is one of the biggest factors when it comes to success at learning a language, and that is a growth mindset. Right now, let me know if this resonates with any of you. Right now, or let's say when we were all in school, right? We crammed for a test. We studied probably the night before, but let's be generous and say we studied a few days before. We crammed, took the test, got an A, and said, yes, success. I feel good about myself. You get that rush of dopamine, you get that rush of endorphins. And then about what? An hour later, that has kind of worn off and you're frustrated and you hate the fact that you have to study again for the next test, right? I think that all of us have probably been there. That is not an actually that effective way of doing anything. And the reason for that is you are chasing a result. And when it comes to language learning, it's such a long process that the results oftentimes don't come fast enough, right? There's no tests. We're not testing ourselves here. There's no teacher to say, well done, student, you've done it. There is none of that external validation. And so if you want to keep with something, you better believe you have to enjoy it. Nobody is going to stick with something if they don't feel validated in the process of doing it. And so what a growth mindset is, it's retraining your brain to, instead of hunt for that result, to actually, you've probably heard this before, but to actually enjoy the journey. So you won't get, it's true, you won't get this spike of endorphins like you did when you get 100 on a test that you've really studied for, but you will get a slower release of endorphins that will allow you to be more consistent. It will make it easier to be more consistent. So that being said, what that means is, I'm sorry, I'm gonna need to drink some water. Okay, so what this means is you are going to have to kind of refocus your brain to enjoy the journey. And I know this sounds incredibly, incredibly difficult. And let's be honest, nobody's just like, okay, done, brain changed, never gonna think that way again. I wish, right? We'd all have perfect self-esteem if that was the case. But I actually had to do this when it came to social media. When I started social media, I freaking hated it. I hated it. I was so self-conscious. It like gave me anxiety. It was so stressful. And I realized like, no, I want to build a life where I can work for myself and be free at some point. I need to figure this the F out. I'm not going to swear. I need to figure this out. And so I slowly started to take a few deep breaths before I started. I started to, this may work for some people, it may not work for others. I started to do affirmations where I would say, today, I'm just going to enjoy it. I don't care if this post gets 0 views. I'm going to post what I want to post. I'm going to have fun, right? And that's kind of the approach that you should ideally take to your studies. If you're having a hard day and you don't get all the way through the 30 vocab words you wanted to memorize, you can't focus, you can't concentrate, I would rather you have a good time but not actually be productive, because that means you can show up again the next day and be more productive tomorrow, right? Whereas if we put all this pressure on ourselves, got to get the result, got to get the result, got to feel that dopamine, got to chase that yes, I did it kind of high, you are not going to enjoy it. This is right now, for the most part, like a hobby. This is not like life or death, I don't think, to any of us. Maybe to some, it could be extremely important, but it's not life or death. Enjoy it. Have as much fun as you can. Learn language by playing games. Give yourself a reward because you showed up every day for a week and did it. Not because, I don't know, like I would rather you change the process of your brain, right? So I want to pause here and I want to check in, because I know sometimes with mindset stuff, it can get really kind of abstract, because there's nothing tangible about our minds. That's what makes it so difficult. So I want to touch base. Is this making sense to everybody? Do you have questions at this point? Is this resonating with you? Do you realize, like, oh my gosh, yes, at work, I just chase the promotion, and then, but I hate every day of my life. And then you get the promotion, you're happy for a couple of days, and then it's back to hating every day of your life. Yes. Okay, good. Love to see it. Okay, we've got a couple more people coming in. Just a second. Yeah, this was a game changer for me. Now I can honestly say, and if anybody's followed me for long enough, you've probably seen a change in my content and how I show up. I love social media now. I am bummed the past week because I've been so busy with school and with planning this class. I haven't had a chance to make new Instagram content. And that makes me sad now. I was somebody who hated it. The talk I never knew I needed. Yay, love that. And there's so much information, free information on Google about developing a growth mindset, how to develop a growth mindset. Obviously, all of us have different minds. Our minds work in different ways. So if you're like, nah, man, affirmations aren't going to do it for me, go ahead and see what else is out there. There's tons and tons and tons of resources about developing a growth mindset. But it basically allows you to reward the effort more than you reward the result. And actually, one of the things I really implemented this when I was doing Instagram. But one of the things I thought about is when I ever have kids or whatever, oftentimes we reward kids when they get 100 on their test. But we don't reward the kids as much if they studied every single day and they worked their butts off and they did their absolute best, even if they didn't get the best grade, to develop that mindset of putting in hard work, of continuing to persevere and be diligent and push through, even when the results aren't showing. In the long run of life, that more diligent kid is going to have a better skill set than the kid who was able to just pull out hundreds, right? The kid who was able to pull out hundreds, who doesn't know how to overcome difficulty, who doesn't know how to persevere, is not going to be very successful the first time they have a roadblock, the first time they have an obstacle, right? So as you go about setting your goals, 1000%. Yes, I know. Why weren't we all like rewarded like that in school? I would have been such a better studier if I was rewarded for studying. But because I'm grateful, I was one of the kids that was able to get pretty good grades without any effort. All of a sudden, when I got to college and I needed to know how to study, absolutely no effing clue what the heck I was doing. I couldn't study to save my life. Even now when I'm learning Korean, I didn't know how to study. I never had to study before. I wish I had been rewarded for putting in the effort more than just the result. So that is the first thing in terms of being consistent, in terms of enjoying the journey. Because again, just about any language is going to be a years long process, years long. I was doing just the bare minimum to get good grades. Yeah, that was me. That was me. And then all of a sudden, I didn't know how to overcome obstacles. My focus is terrible. I had no idea I couldn't focus. I think I have ADHD, or not ADHD, ADD, but I got good grades. So it was never like checked out. Anyways, that's a conversation for me to have with my parents about why they didn't get me assessed. Yeah, I'm glad this is resonating with you. Because again, I think oftentimes when we don't have a growth mindset and when we are then not seeing the results, we feel like a failure. And that's why I started at the beginning. I was like, you guys are not stupid. Nobody here is stupid. Nobody here is dumb. We all just have a mindset where the only thing that shows our success is external. I have to have memorized 100 words in a week. I have to be able to use grammar perfectly 100% of the time. Instead, when it comes to language learning, the real success is when you show up every day or every couple of days, whatever works for you, over years. And that is when you see the results. Because I don't care who you are, you can learn the 1,000 most common words in Korean in one day. If you do not constantly review them, if you do not constantly use them, they're going to be forgotten. And then all of that effort is useless anyway. So I'm going to hop down off my high horse and move on. Okay, the language skills. Let me pull up my notes here because I know that there are some things that I want to make sure I cover. I don't think I'll forget. I spent a long time on this, but you never know. Okay, so basically, every language is made up of 6 to 8 different components, right? The first one is the alphabet, which we are, of course, going to dive into. But we're talking about alphabet, pronunciation, vocab, grammar, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. I was right, it's 8. 8. So with all of those things, we are going to break it down one by one in order to be, where are my notes? Where are my notes? Just a moment. Just a moment. Why does this happen sometimes? There we go. Okay. We are going to break this down into not just like there's going to be a lot of options in here, but I'm also going to try to lay out what scientifically is deemed the most effective methods. We all know science doesn't work for 100% of people. That's okay, right? Feel free to tweak this and adjust this as you need. This is basically to give you the tools that you can use to build your own house. Everybody wants a different looking house, different style, different colors, different windows. This is the tools for you to build your own house, okay? Let's see. I just want to also comment, I think you also have to invest and believe in yourself and invest in yourself in the future. 100%. I totally agree, Jessica. Like that's what language learning is, right? It's you're spending the time now to learn in the future. Same with English, learned for so many years, never been perfect with it, always felt behind. Still, I'm not too good, and I'm afraid to speak, but as long as I can communicate and understand others. Well, I understood that just perfectly. So yeah, success to you. Okay, let's talk about the alphabet. Now, depending on the language you want to learn, this may be a different alphabet than your native language. Not always, but it can be. And one of the biggest mistakes I think that people make is they rely on the target language words. So I'm going to just call them foreign words written in their English language. Yes, so for Korean, it's called Hangul. The alphabet is called Hangul. I was silly. I spent the first 3 months studying Korean vocab with the romanization. That is going to lead to incorrect pronunciations. That's going to lead to me not being able to actually read the words on the signs. So you can learn all the words with romanization, but if you go to Korea on vacation, you can't read a darn thing, right? So that's really important to realize. And it will 100% hold up your progress. I know it can be scary to learn another alphabet. Some alphabets are harder than others. But the first thing you should do, because you can't learn any words without knowing how they're written and how to read it, is learn the alphabet. But how do you actually do that? I got you. First off, let me also say it's oftentimes more intimidating than it usually is. Not always, but oftentimes more intimidating. So like if you get nothing else out of this class, whatever your language fear is, just like lower the bar of how scary you think it's going to be. It's not going to be that bad. Like I said, none of this stuff is life and death. There is no grammar principle that is as scary as, I don't know, hanging off a cliff. We ain't there. That's not, we don't need to be so stressed about any points of grammar, any speaking or writing. We'll all be okay. If it takes us a couple of days or a couple of weeks to learn it, we'll all be okay. It'll be fine. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is you are going to need to understand the basics of how this alphabet works. Now, in most alphabets, each, like, I'm going to call it a symbol, letter, signifies a sound. But in some alphabets, I know a few of you mentioned that you want to learn Chinese and Japanese. There may be like a symbol that means a whole word, right? So you're just going to need to sit down, understand the basics of whatever alphabet you're trying to learn. Is every symbol a sound? Is every symbol a word? What are we doing? What's going on? That's where to start, okay? This is also where Google, again, is a great resource. There, unless you're maybe learning like a language that's spoken by 1,000 people, there's probably a good amount of free resources available on Google to get you started, right? The next thing you're going to want to do, is you are going to want to break down your alphabet, if it's one that has sounds, into like consonants and vowels. It helps to practice them separately. It helps to know kind of what's what, because all of us are familiar with vowels and consonants. I minored in Italian in college, and so I'm going to try not to get too like phonetics, but phonetically, the role of consonants and vowels are hugely important in language. And so for the sake of this conversation, just know what they are. Break them down into vowels, consonants. And then we're going to talk about pronunciation in the next section, right? I don't want to overlap too much. The next thing when it comes to the alphabet is you're going to need to know how to write it. How to write it, how to read it, these kind of go hand in hand. I'm a person who very much, I need to write things to remember. Like the way my hand moves is how I will remember it. So a great way for you to practice is as you write each letter or as you write each symbol, even if it means a word, right? Repeat the pronunciation. And again, we're going to talk about pronunciation entirely separately, but everything in language kind of overlaps, right? Like you can't have letters without vocab, and you can't have vocab without reading. Like it all kind of intertwines. So what I would do, or one of the tricks I would do, is listen to a native speaker's pronunciation of that letter. As I would write it out, I would say it. And I would do that over and over and over and over again until it's really comfortable. I am still pretty convinced reading is one of my weak points in Korean, and I'm pretty sure it's because I didn't focus as much on this as I should have when I started. And I'm making up for it now. I'm unlearning bad habits and things like that. but just don't learn the bad habits to start with. Start right, and yeah, things will be better for you. Another thing that's really, really helpful is, again, this kind of ties into pronunciation. We may get some overlap here, but for each symbol letter, make a pronunciation guide. Pay attention to what your tongue is supposed to do in your mouth, right? So there's I'm going to put it in the chat. There's, again, this is not a Korean specific thing. I'm just using this as an example. There is this symbol, the liet. And again, I'm not native. My pronunciation will not be perfect. You can come for me if it's real bad, but I don't really care if you do. This is liet. It's a sound that doesn't exist in English, which is why I struggle with it. My boyfriend, who is Korean, cannot say the sound like an English L, because they don't have that sound in Korean. So anytime we're talking about the Romanization, that symbol that I put in the chat is oftentimes spelled out as an L or as an R. It is neither of those things. It is y. It's not L and it's not R. And so my boyfriend, when we're watching Formula One, he struggles to say McLaren, because there's R's and L's all over the place. It's McLaren. And it's adorable. And I absolutely love it. And I refuse to teach him the correct way to pronounce it, because I just refuse to do that. I love it. I love the way he says it. But it is important to know that, it is important to know that by relying on the Romanization, or again, if you don't speak a Roman language, relying on the written translation into your own language of how a word is supposed to be spelled, is just going to hold you back. So it may help to write your own pronunciation guide so that you know, okay, when I do it's not a my tongue isn't out, it's like at the top of the roof of my mouth, and understand where you're supposed to place your tongue. I found that hugely helpful when I wrote my own pronunciation guide, which I totally forgot about until I started making this. So I should make sure to get you guys that. Okay. Oh, let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. Also, to make your life easier, go ahead. All of our languages are pretty fluid, right? So you may find that there's similarities of parts of words in your language that will sound like parts of words or letters in another language. Feel free to leverage what you already know, right? Feel free to make your life as easy as possible. If it helps to remember the letters with a song, make a song. If mnemonics work for you, do that. Like whatever shortcuts you can take, as long as they get you the right pronunciation, you remember it correctly, take full advantage. Okay. Okay. And then building this into full words, like the market song intimate. Yes, those are great examples in Korean. I'm not going to sing them for you. You'll all leave immediately from this Zoom. But that is to help children, there's always some kind of alphabet song, pronunciation song. Like those basic songs are great. Leverage them. If you don't know any, Google it. Check on YouTube. I'm sure they're out there. Okay. The next step, which is kind of going to segue us into pronunciation, is obviously letters on their own don't do you much good. You need full words. And so as you are practicing writing, as you are kind of repeating these things over and over again after listening to a native speaker, try and put them together to make your own words. Start simple. There's a reason why we don't start kids with like thorough in English, because the spelling is a mess. We start them with dog and cat. Start with the simple, like build your words and sounds, and even, you know what, even if it's not an exact word, don't memorize it, but practice putting the sounds together. Practice putting the letters together and putting the sounds together. Okay. Which brings us to pronunciation. This is, again, something that I think people do not focus on enough in the beginning. And I think it's because we all just assume, oh, I'm going to have an accent. I'm going to have an accent. And that's fine. Accents are totally normal and natural. But you don't have to have an accent. By choosing not to study the pronunciation, you are choosing to have an accent. You don't have to have an accent. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. You don't have to have an accent. And also, it is worth saying that just because you know the words and you know how to spell the words, if you speak a word with such a strong accent that others cannot understand you, I would say that you're not going to be very good at communicating in that language. And there's a prime example of this. I don't know if anybody in here is from Scotland or Ireland, but there are some times when I'm a native English speaker, they're also native English speakers. This could be true for certain parts of America as well. There's certain regions of America that have really strong accents that I'm not used to. And so sometimes they will be speaking English and I will really have to listen hard to figure out what they're saying. There's nothing wrong with their accent. There's nothing wrong with my accent. We just pronounce things differently. It's the same language with different pronunciations. And so it makes a huge, huge difference. So it also will help you like not learn bad habits. It's so much harder to unlearn a bad habit than it is to just learn it the right way. So how do we actually practice pronunciation? Coming right up. Okay. Like I said, write your own pronunciation guide. It's going to be hugely helpful for you to just understand, again, exactly what your lips and mouth and tongue are supposed to do. Fatima agrees. As a native Arabic speaker, the standard Arabic is the same, but different regions have different accents and it can be hard to understand each other. Yeah, exactly. So as you write your own pronunciation guide, pay attention to what your lips and your mouth are supposed to do. Particularly in Korean, I know a bunch of you mentioned that you wanted to learn Korean. There's an aw sound and an o sound. And those tend to get very confused. I've had my teacher correct me a few times in the past when I was, this is a few years ago, that my aw and my o were not different enough. And she was like, I don't understand what you're saying. So one of them, my mouth is longer, aw, and one of them it's smaller, oh. Paying attention to those things makes a huge difference. I didn't know that my mouth was supposed to go long for one and not the other. I didn't know that. It wasn't until I was like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do? Boom, clicked. I never made the mistake again. But until that point, my teacher was struggling to understand me. I think a lot of English speakers struggle with that difference. So you're not alone. Also, this is a fun thing to do, but did you know that there is an international phonetic alphabet? There is an alphabet established by linguists, I guess, that will describe every sound exactly the same. So what I did this for a week probably, was I had learned the International Phonetic Alphabet in college for Italian. I had to write entire sentences phonetically, and at the time it was torture. But when I wanted to learn Korean, it was extremely helpful because I could look at a word that I knew. Let's take the English word dog. I could take that and I could look at the phonetic alphabet for each sound. And then I could take a Korean word that kind of sounded similar and compare the differences and see exactly what I was supposed to do. You don't spend that much time memorizing the phonetic alphabet. It's not super important, but it is incredibly helpful because every sound that humans make, there's a way to write that. And each of those symbols will describe and tell you what you need to do with your mouth, how you need to project from your throat, what you need to do with your tongue. Yes, I agree, Anna. Like it gets so interesting. I think it's so interesting. So there's a fun little tip. If you're like a language nerd, full on, full blown, self-owning language nerd, go ahead and look up the phonetics of how words are actually pronounced. I obviously reference your native language as well. I think it's fascinating. Okay. Then again, as you go from sounds like single alphabet letters into words, you're going to want to do the same kind of thing where you start with simple words, listen to a native speaker, and then repeat. Listen to the native speaker and repeat. And then, if you're really feeling brave, record yourself. And I guarantee you, you will notice, oh, I thought I was saying that right, but I'm not. And then you will slowly but surely realize how to fix your pronunciation. And again, the reason why this helps is because this way, when you go and memorize vocab words, you're memorizing the right word. There are so many times when my pronunciation is still just a little bit off, and my boyfriend is like, what are you saying? And I'm like, this. Obviously, I'm saying this. And he's like, no, you're not. So it's worth it. Okay. Then, okay, this is another helpful tip. That comes with a bit of a grain of salt, but if you are starting at nothing, go ahead and there's a ton of free language apps for pronunciation and stuff like that. Whatever your target language is, whatever language you're trying to learn, go ahead and get an app that has like a pronunciation feedback kind of system built in. And that will at least head you in the right direction, if that makes sense. There's a ton of great technology out there to help with this. And again, you don't need to necessarily pay for it. You don't need to necessarily make a huge investment if you don't want to. It just, again, depending on the language you're learning, it may take you some searching to find a pronunciation feedback kind of app. Or even like, you could even use maybe like Siri or Google on your phone and be like, put your phone in the language that you want it to understand, try and speak into it and see if it recognizes it. That's not a foolproof way either. There's no real perfect feedback app that I've found, but that's a great tip. Again, if you're just getting started and you're just kind of way on the outskirts of learning how to pronounce, that can be a good way to start to narrow you in. And then again, as you get more comfortable, you can get more and more precise. GI just said, hey, Korea is a good one for pronouncing in Korean. What are some other ones I've used? I'll have to look and I'll have to get back to you because now none of them are coming to my mind. Hey, Korea is a good one. Memrise, I think, has a pronunciation function. It's MEM. Don't quote me on that. And again, forgive me if some of my information is outdated. You know, these apps like change every week with what's free and what's not free. That one, I believe, has pronunciation built in as well. Okay, this is kind of, now that we've got our words down, we're repeating after native speakers with full words. The next step is to kind of start with short sentences. And this is, your individual word pronunciation should be great. However, cliffhanger. However, every language, and honestly, even within languages, every region or whatever will have different intonations, different cadence with their voice, different ways that they add emphasis or accents. And that is something that you can learn. I call it shadowing. I'm not the only one who calls it this. I didn't name it that. It's called shadowing, where instead of just doing a word at a time, you take again, start small. I'm not asking you to start with Macbeth. Start with like a 5-word sentence. Listen to a native speaker. See where the tone of their voice goes up and where does it naturally go down. When you ask a question, does your voice go up at the end or does it go down? Every language is a little bit different in terms of where they place their emphasis. So that is a really great technique as well to really sound like a native person, because your cadence is going to be natural. It's not going to be the complete opposite of what somebody is used to. Okay. And then, yes, okay, if you have a language exchange partner, if you don't, that's totally fine. But again, some of you might. If you have a language exchange partner, ask them to be really strict with how they correct your pronunciation. And again, that means don't get offended if they're correcting. They're trying to be helpful. They're not telling you you're stupid. They're trying to help you do it right, right? I know when I was learning Italian, I lived with an Italian person. I was young. I was in my early 20s. And every time she corrected me on something, I was like, oh, I'm so hurt. No, she's literally trying to help me. I don't know why I had such an attitude. I never said anything or did anything. I just had an internal attitude about it. I don't know why. Don't be like me. Be better. GI coming in here with some fabulous resources. Yes, Hello Talk. I love Hello Talk. Highly recommend that. Highly recommend Hello Talk. Lots of other stuff for grammar in there as well. Yes, Hello Talk. That was the one I was trying to think of earlier. I've used Hello Talk for years. Okay. Next. Now we've got our cadence and we've got our intonation and our rhythm. We've got our words, small sentences. Now, if you really want to like become a true master, give yourself some tongue twisters. And again, the purpose of this, you're not going to walk around and spout off tongue twisters at the grocery store, but it can be extremely helpful in terms of, again, getting your mouth is made of muscles, right? Your tongue is a muscle. If you're not used to using those muscles in a certain way, you have to practice and you have to train them. Doing tongue twisters gives your mouth like a workout. It's a language workout where you have to kind of accurately and precisely pronounce certain words, certain letters, certain sounds. Every language, as far as I'm aware, and I've looked up a few, has tongue twisters. I know Thai, Chinese, Japanese, English, Korean, Italian, most languages have tongue twisters. Start slow and build, right? The more that you can get your mouth used to moving in a certain way, this was my number one tip when I was learning Italian, was Italian is such an emotional language. You have to move your mouth a lot. And I was over here with my lazy English mouth, hardly moving it at all. And when I started to really practice emphasizing exactly how I was using my mouth, my pronunciation improved dramatically. More recommendations coming in. There's an app called Lingby where you can call native speakers in whatever language you want. That's awesome. And also, like, what a great way to like, I'm sure they won't all turn out as friendships, but I've had a few language partners turn into truly good friends. And always make sure that, you know, if you are seeking help, because we all like to be good people here, let's make sure that in return, we're also willing to give help, right? If somebody wants to practice with us in our native language too, you got to be willing to do that. It has to go both ways. Okay, moving on. Oh my God, it's already been almost an hour. This is why I had to make the ebook and put all of like the overcoming obstacles in that, because we're not even like, I knew. Okay. I had the apps that we've mentioned so far: Hello Talk, Lingby, Hey Korea, Duolingo, Lingori, Eggabun. Yeah. Woohoo, GI. Again, right now, she mentioned she's getting the ebook. I should probably, you guys are so nice. Thank you for saying that in the comments. I should probably get you access to the ebook. Didn't even think about that. But you know, you live and you learn. Okay, moving on. Vocabulary. This is, dare I say, not everybody's favorite thing to do, and that is memorize. That's okay. It doesn't have to be, but it is true that your vocabulary, you're going to have to spend time memorizing, right? You can potentially learn like a child and never memorize anything. and learn just in context, but children take about 10 years to get decent with their language, right? There is a reason why, sorry. There is a reason why memorization is such a huge part of language. And so we are going to discuss. So, sorry, my phone keeps like throwing me back to the wrong page, which is not what I need. Okay. So the first thing you are going to do when it comes to language, I also made this mistake. I didn't go in with any kind of like strategy. I just was like learning random words that I saw outside my window, and that can be helpful. But again, with language, you want to build a house. We have the tools, we need to build a house. You don't start with the roof. You start with like the foundation. And so the best place to start is with the 1,000 most common words. Now that sounds like a lot, but the 1,000 most common words really are they make up 83% of all language. So by memorizing and learning 1,000 words, you can actually learn 83% of everything that you need to know. And that can be still a little bit intimidating, but let's do some math. Let's say you're going to word 20 words a day. I think that's decently reasonable. I don't think that's beyond the realm of anybody's possibility. That's 50 days of 20 words a day. If that's still too much and you want to go slower and you want to do 10 words a day, it's 100 days. Now you need to continue to review that, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but that is manageable. That is manageable, I think. Again, just knowing words isn't going to be enough. You need to understand the grammar and all of that comes along with it. But there's a lot to be said of learning 10 words a day for 3 months is 1,000 words. That, I think, hopefully puts it in perspective. So if you all are a little bit stressing, don't be stressing. There's no need. So learning vocabulary. Sorry. Okay. We've talked about the 1,000 words. Okay. Now, if you just look at a list, like the list that I am sending to you all with the recording link of this, if you just look at a long list of 1,000 words, you're going to freak the heck out and be very overwhelmed. What you can do, and I've purposely not done this for you, not because I'm just going to make you work for the sake of making you work, but because everybody's mind works differently. And a lot of this is how I work. Oftentimes in the process of making a flashcard, I learn the word and I don't actually need to study the word. Because again, I said I write things down and that's how I remember them. So I have not broken these 1,000 words. I've given you the parts of speech, but I have not broken them down too much in terms of like, this is all the fruit, this is all the vegetables, this is all the household stuff. They're in the order of, from my research, could tell was the most common to the lesser like the less common. So that's the order of the list. It's not chunked. However, I would highly recommend, as you start to pick out vocabulary words to learn, chunking them into similar categories. This is literally a memorization technique called chunking, and it can be extremely helpful in terms of allowing your brain to kind of make connections in an easier way. Which brings me to my next point. And that is, how do I describe this? This was the part that I struggled most, both in the ebook and in this, but I think I've got it. Your brain is basically a big electrical circuit, right? When you go and move your hand, there is an electrical thing that happens that sends a signal from your brain to your hand telling you to move it, right? Our memories work in a similar way. It's all interwoven. And so if right now, if I look at a word, what word do I have in front of me? Exercise band. This is trash, but it's right on my desk. Exercise band. Those are just symbols that don't necessarily have meaning. Well, let me rephrase that. If you just look at those symbols, there's an image that comes into my mind. Exercise band. I know exactly what that is. I'm not thinking, okay, what is the translation of exercise band? Obviously, this is my native language, but you don't want to be translating, right? The best way to have your brain memorize vocabulary words is to have as many connections to that word as possible. An image, a sound, a smell, a memory, a story, as many as you can, right? So again, I'm going to pick an English word, velvet. Velvet has a texture. Velvet, when you rub it, it kind of has a sound. Velvet, you know, if you're like looking at it in a store or something like that, you know if a material is velvet. Velvet is not a word that any of us use that often in English. Doesn't come up that often. But there are so many connections to that word that you kind of just always remember it. Also, I love the conversations going on in the chat. Rhea, I've actually had that thought on the train today, and there might be some stuff coming. Yes, if you want to learn a language, you have to think in the same language. So as you are learning, and okay, let's say you have now your 1,000 vocab words chunked into fruit, right? As you are memorizing your words, I'm going to pick sagwa, means strawberry. No, it doesn't. It means apple. Sorry. It means apple in Korean. Instead of saying sagwa means apple, think sagwa and close your eyes. Picture an apple. Is it a red apple, a green apple, a yellow apple? Is it sweet or is it sour? Does it crunch or is it one of those soft, yucky ones? When was the last time you ate an apple? Do you like apples? As many connections as you can think and make to the word sagwa will help your brain remember that word better. And it will help you remember it in such a way that is not tied to your native language. Let me know if this is making sense. Let me know if I'm explaining this in a way that is resonating and clear. Because again, when we're talking about brains and neurons, it can get a little bit complex. But basically, what I'm saying is, if you are learning the words, put pictures on your cards or visualize in your mind what the word means. And there's obviously some words that this is impossible for, right? The word however, or but, or and. There's no visual there, right? And so those may come down to just forcefully memorizing however is blank. But as often as you can, associate a memory, a thought, a sound, an idea to that word, the more connections your brain will have. And so it's like, instead of holding on to a life vest with one hand, like you grew 10 hands and you're holding on to it. It's a lot harder to forget and let go of that word, the stronger the connection is. To help with this as well, particularly for the words that don't have anything like visual, that are a bit more intangible, the best thing that you can do is, again, instead of just like, I'm not saying don't have flashcards with just the translation. That's fine too. But in addition, particularly for these intangible words, use a sentence. Because you are learning, I wanted to go to the park. However, it was raining. Not only are you learning a bunch of other grammar and vocab in context, but you start to internalize the meaning in a way that, again, is not connected with a direct translation. Oh, great idea. I didn't think about this. Genius. Example, songs or linking them to dramas or movie lines. That's so smart. That is so smart. Using any kind of the word in context that doesn't mean this equals this, that you don't have to do that equation in your mind. Sentences, using lines from songs or grammar is going to be a better way to remember them. Okay. Next. Yes, did that. As much as possible, rely on images. We did that. Oh yeah, make it fun. There are so many games that you can do with vocab. Make yourself a little crossword puzzle. Make yourself a word search. With like one, again, I know I just said don't use translations, but like they serve a purpose too, right? None of this is going to be never do this. Everything serves a purpose. Make a game of memory. Make, I have a list of games that I want to make for Korean. So again, stick around. They're coming. But in the meanwhile, because I'm busy, I got things to do, you guys can make your own games. Come up with your own ideas of what you can do and how to make it fun for you. Because again, you're never going to do something if you're miserable. And then this is going to be the most important thing, is as you are making these cards and lists of vocab, of potentially pictures and sentences, it is going to be so important that you review them. And again, almost every single flashcard app does it this way, but it's called spaced repetition, where the words that you start with, like you start with all of the words, and then the ones you know go into another bucket, and they aren't reviewed for maybe a couple of days. The words that you don't know are reviewed more frequently until you get comfortable, and then it kind of gets spaced out. This is where a lot of people fail. They memorize their words, but they don't ever go back. This is why I would actually recommend you kind of having like whether you want to do physical flashcards or an app, it doesn't really matter. But as you are going through your words, go ahead and chunk them into fruit, vegetables, house, whatever. Have different like card decks of that, but then also have a deck with all of the words that you've learned, so that all of your words are coming up with some kind of like frequency. Because this was my huge mistake. I used to memorize vocab on the train, and I had a bunch of little lists that I had chunked down. But then I had like 15 different lists, and I forgot which ones I hadn't reviewed, and I didn't know what I was supposed to study. And so that spaced repetition kind of didn't happen. And so I spent a lot of time putting words into my short-term memory, but I didn't review them long enough for them to move to my long-term memory. And I bet a lot of people here can relate to that. You review words, you feel comfortable with them, but then you don't look at them for a month. It doesn't even take a month. Drops is a great app for that. I used to use that too. You don't use them for a month or a week, and you find that you have to kind of redo like 80% of them. Now, it is worth saying that if you do forget a word, when you go and rememorize it, it is going to be faster. You are going to have already a frame of reference for that word. It's not going to be completely foreign. It's in there somewhere. And the second time you learn it, your brain will form another connection. The third time you learn it, your brain will form another connection. But again, that's tedious and a little bit more difficult. It would be best to learn our words as efficiently as possible. So you're going to want to make sure that you used spaced repetition. Okay. And again, it's going to need to be something that's done kind of like every day. It can be while you're brushing your teeth. If that's all the time that you can give while you're brushing your teeth but obviously the more time you can do, the better. Okay. Grammar. This is where I get freaking excited, man, because I love grammar. I really do. I am a grammar nerd. What can I say? Sorry, I had to pause sharing my screen for a second. Somebody mentioned this and I wanted to make sure that I provided. If anybody was looking for the ebook guide thing, here's the link. It's on pre-sale right now, again, because I said I still need a couple of days. I'm still adding in the memorization techniques. They're a little bit more technical than I thought, and I need to read it over for spelling. So again, it's $19.50 right now. It will be $26. There will be updates. I'm thinking probably every 6 months, I'm going to go through and update all of my ebooks. Depending on how many I end up making, I'm really, really enjoying writing. I always loved writing and then I never did it. I'm really enjoying writing. So I may end up with a lot of ebooks. But every time I update, the price will go up because there will just be more, better, valuable information. It's killer, man. This ebook is killer. Anyways, I digress. I'm just really proud of it. Grammar. I saw somebody mention this is where they get stuck. Yes, this is the tricky one, but I'm a nerd for grammar. And obviously this is how you give all of those words meaning, right? This is how you actually turn those words to conveying your thoughts and ideas and truly like be able to communicate, right? And so there's a couple of things that you're going to have to do. The first thing that I would recommend is having some sort of structured grammar resource. This could be a good website. HowToLearnKorean.com is my favorite one for Korean. It could be a good grammar website, or it could be an actual textbook. If you are picking a textbook, make sure you're picking one that is for self-learning, right? You don't want to pick one that you need a teacher to go through with you and explain the principles. Also one preferably with exercises. There's two ways that two kind of approaches that you're going to have, and you're going to have to take both of them. The first approach is going to be start by just reading the principles of the grammar. This is the future tense. This is when you use it. This is how you use it. Just those basics. Go ahead and make a flashcard for that, put it in your pile, and review it periodically. However, the real best way to learn grammar is also in context. This is 100% going to overlap with writing. I understand. But one of the best tips for not just learning grammar, because learning grammar is one thing. I can understand what a grammar tense is, and I can understand when I'm supposed to use it, but actually being able to use it is completely different. And that's because there's a huge disconnect in our brain between understanding like the background principles and then seeing it in context, seeing how it's used, seeing examples. So as you do this, go ahead and write your own sentence of the grammar in use. Go ahead and include some of the new vocab words that you've been learning, but don't overcomplicate these sentences. Keep it kind of as much as possible, 1 point of grammar per sentence, because you really want to focus on understanding how to use it, when it's used, stuff like that. Take these sentences. Oh, you're so welcome, Jessica. You guys will have the replay in probably tonight. Thank you for being here. Take the sentences that you are writing and throw them into a website like Hello Native, where you can have a native speaker go in and correct your sentences. No, this is unnatural. This is incorrect. It's better to phrase it like this. I did that with all of my, all of the sentences I write, not all, sometimes it gets a little excessive. Any like journal entry or diary entry that I'm wanting feedback on, I put in to Hello Native and I get corrections. Take the corrected sentences of that grammar and put that into your pile as well and review that. Okay, got that. Don't forget to make sure the sentences are corrected. Okay, this is a fun thing that I just thought of a few months ago. that I just started doing was I would make a bingo card of different grammar points. Present tense, future tense, gerund, past perfect, whatever, right? As you're learning grammar, go ahead and put them on a bingo card. Throw on your favorite YouTube show or Netflix show in that language and mark when each grammar point is coming up. And again, you may not, I think, again, another hard part when it comes, this is part of listening, but the hard part of listening is we hear so much information at once. Whereas if you're playing a game like bingo, you're kind of focusing in on, oh, I heard the conjugation. Oh, I noticed that grammar point. Go ahead and pause it. Then you can, rewind and listen to the whole sentence 12 times if you have to get the meaning of the sentence. But it's just a good way to help you, again, notice the grammar in use, because it is not easy. There's a difference between knowing what the grammar principles are and being able to use it, and writing out sentences, using the grammar in sentences, paying attention to other people using the grammar is the best way to kind of bridge that gap between understanding what it is and kind of how to use it. Yeah, it's actually been really kind of fun. Sometimes some grammar may not show up depending on the topic of the thing. That's okay. It's just meant to be fun. Like, you're not a failure if you miss it. It's okay. But it's been kind of a fun thing to implement over like a 10-minute YouTube video. I just put like a little mark so I can reuse my bingo card. Yeah, so let me pause there for a second before I move on. Also, everybody feel free to stretch out. I know we've been sitting and talking for a long time. But talk to me about grammar. Does this feel a little bit more manageable in terms of like how to actually put it into use? Everything else, speaking, reading, writing, listening, is all going to have grammar tied to it. But does anybody have questions about grammar at the moment? Not Korean grammar. I don't feel confident enough to answer Korean grammar questions. But do you have questions about learning grammar in general? I'm going to go ahead and open this window because I am sweating. I'm hot. Okay. I have noticed that even natives struggle with grammar, so they rely more. Yeah. I mean, think of your own native language. How much grammar do you actually, not that we don't know it, we know when to use it. We don't necessarily know why. We can't necessarily explain to somebody else the intricate details of it. I know I can't in English, and I even taught English. And sometimes people would ask me questions and I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, it happens. Okay, let's move it right along. Writing. Okay, this is something that I want to talk about. When you're learning a language, it is almost all input. The language is being delivered and packaged to you in a nice, lovely bow, and you don't really have to do anything except accept it. Receive the language that is being delivered to you. That's all input, right? It's all coming to us input. There are two forms of output only. And this is where you really are in charge of conveying meaning. You are in charge of putting the words together in an order that makes sense. You are in charge of using the grammar and knowing the vocab. Those two things are writing and speaking. That's why you hear me say, write your vocab words in sentences. Use the grammar written in sentences. Because unless you're speaking all of the time, it's the only other form of output there is. It's the only way to practice using any of the things that you're learning. And when you're writing, unlike speaking, you're able to slow down, really think about it, start small, and then build out and slowly expand your sentences. And eventually you will notice by doing that, it will become more natural and more quick. You won't need to sit and look up the the definition for this word because you've used it 10 times, right? So writing is really so key when it comes to learning a language. It really is. It's so key. I can't stress it enough. And it's one part that I was like, oh, that's boring. I don't want to. I wish I had. I would have been so much further along. So how we've already kind of mentioned a few ways, right? For every new word you're learning, or again, to say every word kind of almost becomes a hindrance because then you're like, oh, I can't move on. I can't do grammar or I can't keep studying today. I haven't made sentences for yesterday's words. No. Just do the best you can, right? If you are studying 20 words and you only make a sentence for one of them, that's fine. You've still got the other flashcards with just the definition on the back. You can add sentences as you go. But for as many words as possible, write sentences. This will give you the grammar practice and the vocab practice. I also mentioned this with grammar. Get all of your writing or as much of writing as you can corrected by a native speaker so that you can see, oh no, that's a little bit unnatural. I would phrase it this way. Because again, when you're talking, if English wasn't my native language and I was learning, there's not a lot of active correction in speech, right? It's really hard to be like, hey, actually, you know, that whole sentence you just said, instead try and say it this way. It doesn't happen. It can't happen. It would be weird. You might get correction on a word, but not on your word placement and your grammar and it doesn't happen. So get as much writing as you can corrected on a website or app. They have both, like Hello Native, Hi Native, or Hello Native. I'm not sure which one. Every day, keep a journal. Yes, see, I just said some people try to write in diaries about how the day has been, search words they don't know. Highly recommend. Doesn't have to be, we're not looking for, it doesn't have to be the most beautiful poetry. If you went to the store, say, I went store, if that's all you've got. Say store, if that's all you've got. Use whatever you can, and then again, you will slowly start to build. Doesn't have to be long. You can set a timer and say 10 minutes. If it takes you 10 minutes to write half a sentence, so be it. You did it. You showed up. Now that you have a growth mindset, you're winning. Like that is your endorphin release. Okay, next. Oh, this is a kind of fun thing to do. Go ahead and practice. This won't be corrected, but go ahead and practice writing in like the comment section of your favorite YouTuber or your favorite Instagram follower or whatever. Practice writing, even if it's just one word over and over again until it becomes natural. Good. If that's all you've got, that's fine. That's fine. I think it goes without saying, but obviously let's keep it positive. Let's not be mean in anybody's comments in any language. We're not mean people. But yeah, go ahead and learn how to give words of encouragement in that language. It's a fantastic tool. Then, okay, now we're getting into the fun stuff. Fighting. 감사합니다. Yes, swear words are fine to learn, but it's hopefully not coming up that much in your not that much in your sentences. Another thing you can do is practice writing your own translations of songs or whatever, phrases from K-dramas, whatever you want it to be. This is, again, don't be too hard on yourself. Don't look at the translation that's official and your translation be like, I suck. No, guys, this is a learning exercise practice. As anybody who speaks more than one language knows, there's like so many ways to say the same thing. It doesn't mean that your way is right or wrong, but it's just, again, to get you more familiar with manipulating the language. I know one of the things that I struggle with is I'm always like, well, what do I say? What do I write about? I don't want to write about my day. I didn't do anything. Hey, thanks for joining. Oh, dude, that sounds so fun. I also would have gone to a festival instead of this class that will also be on YouTube later. Good choice. Yes. So manipulating language is what we really want to practice. And if that comes with songs, that's fine. If it's not perfect, that's fine. The bar can't be perfect, right? We can't be striving for perfection until we've passed terrible, horrible, still not very good, but getting better. Kind of okay. Like there's so many levels before perfect. Like, let's start where we are. So yeah, translating songs can be really fun. However, as you are writing, keep in mind that most languages, can't speak for all, most languages are slightly different in between how they're written and how they're spoken. So as you're writing, again, this may be where a Google search for your specific target language is coming into play, whatever language you're learning, but do your best to make sure that you're noticing the differences. If there's a bit of a formality change, is there a vocabulary change? Every language is kind of different, but just something to keep in mind. So I challenge you all to write a little bit in your language every day. There will be coming a little book of writing prompts for language learning, which I'm super excited about. That will be a part of the guide as well. That'll just be uploaded, and it will also be available separately. But that's a little bit further out. That's not coming in 48 hours. Okay. You did miss some important topics, but that's okay. There's a replay. And you can watch it as many times as you want, because again, I warned everybody at the beginning that I was going to give you a lot of information. And I think it's safe to say that so far I have delivered, because I have given you a lot of information. So all of you would probably do well either rewatching the replay if you're looking for something easy, put it on in the background. If you want something a bit more structured that you can work through a bit slower, that's again literally why I made the ebook, so that you can look through it more slowly at your own pace, highlight whatever, both options are available. Thank you. I enjoy stuff like this. I really think it's fun. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying it too. Okay, reading. This is, I'll be honest, not my strength in Korean. It is something I'm much better at in Italian. But the first thing you're going to want to do is start at your level. Well, okay, first let's explain why reading is important. Reading is important because reading is always important. If you want to read menus, signs, directions, maps, you got to know how to read. You got to be able to like find the words, right? So that it kind of speaks for itself, right? But it's also not necessarily the easiest. It's not necessarily easy to find level appropriate material. There's a website on Naver, which I don't remember because I haven't used it in so long, which is for children, and it's a much better for like beginners reading, because what I see a lot of people do is they start with like Harry Potter. Now, who doesn't love Harry Potter? I love Harry Potter. I have read most of Harry Potter in Italian. However, when you're starting out, it's best to start again with basic stuff. Start with, again, if you're learning like present, future, past tense, yes, that will all be in Harry Potter, but so will 12,000 other points of grammar that you haven't learned yet. There's a book of, yes, I have this book of children's stories in Korean, but it is in New Jersey, not with me. I think it's called Short Stories for Korean Language Learners. I literally think it's called that. I have that book. It's very good. I like it very much. Yes. Oh, you guys are the best. Oh, Lingyu. I used that too. I used that I think I still have a subscription to that. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked. I'm so sorry. Let me go back to my notes. This is why I have notes, is to keep me on track. Start at your level. Use texts that are going to have the grammar points and the vocabulary that you're learning. Because again, the more that you see everything that you're learning in use, the better grasp you will have on it. Okay. The next thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that you're reading out loud, especially at the beginning, because again, this will help you get the pronunciation right. This can help reinforce the meaning of what you're reading in your brain, because then a word on the page that you see, if you just look at it, that's just visual. That's one connection. Reading it, speaking it, hearing it is 3 connections. You're seeing it with your eyes, you're like phrasing it, speaking it out with your mouth, meaning your lips and your mouth are getting like muscle memory kind of practice, and you're hearing it. It's auditory. So again, the more connections you can give yourself, the better. So at the beginning, read out loud. However, what you don't want is to only be able to understand things if you're reading out loud. There is, myself included, sometimes I struggle with the words. If like I'm just looking at a word, I'm like, what does it mean? And then I say it out loud and I'm like, oh, I get it. There's definitely people in my Korean class right now who are reading quietly under their breath, but they have to read out loud in order to understand. So you don't want it to become a crutch, right? So maybe balance sometimes reading out loud with sometimes reading it just to yourself in your head. Yes. Sometimes I try singing along to K-pop songs on Spotify. I 100% do this, probably about once a day. Read along with the words as it's being said. Go to YouTube channels or Netflix and whatever. Again, ideally stuff for a younger audience is slightly better at the beginning. You know, you don't want a movie about the financial crisis or something. It's just going to be way too advanced. But talking about puppies is maybe okay. Put on the subtitles and focus on reading the subtitles. This is again because it's reading practice. You are going to hear me say in the next section on listening to make sure that you take the subtitles off. When you are engaging when you're trying to strengthen one particular grammar or language component, focus on that language component. So if you are practicing reading, when you're watching a YouTube video, focus on reading. Maybe your comprehension isn't all the way there. Maybe you're not really listening, but you're there to practice reading. That will like help strengthen those innate like skills individually. But keep in mind, subtitles also move quick. So maybe on YouTube, maybe you need to slow the video down to half speed or something like that. Another thing, this is something that Lingq is great for, is being able to read the same text over and over and over again. It's not the most fun thing to do, but it is extremely effective, right? Read a text, pull out the words that you don't know, pull out the grammar that you don't know, go ahead, make cards for them, write your own sentences for those words and those grammar points that you didn't know, study them, go back to the text and read it again. Pull out new words, see if you understand the meaning better. Whatever, continue to study, go back a couple days later and read it again. Reviewing the same text over and over again is great because, again, it's not just giving you sentence blocks at a time. Now you're getting into paragraphs and you're able to like see the flow of language again a little bit better. I spent over 5 minutes to read out loud Vitamin C in soda, thinking it was the flavor. Oh my God. For me, Konglish, English words written in Korean, I don't think I've ever looked at the word and been like, I understand what that means. I never get it. And yes, pay attention to the way they move their mouths is also going to be helpful as you watch subtitles and stuff like that. So yeah, make sure you're reading the texts often, right? Again, that's where Lingq is a great app. That's where like a book might be a great resource as well. Also, please don't think that you need to buy 12 million resources. It's better to carefully pick a few resources, even use free ones, than to buy like 12,000 of them. Have two that are well thought out that you actually use instead of 1,200 that you bought that you don't. It doesn't do anybody any good as if you buy them and you leave them on a shelf. Okay. The last thing that I am going to do is again, make sure when you're picking text, I kind of mentioned this, you want it to be at grade level, but you also want it to be, you also want it to have like vocab and language that is useful, right? Knowing how to say, like, I'm using Harry Potter for reference, using Avada Kedavra, that's not going to come up. Magic wand, not going to come up. Cloak, not going to come up. Because it's a fantasy book. And as much as I want it to be true, the Harry Potter world isn't real. At least I didn't get an invitation to Hogwarts. So for me, it's not real. But fantasy books are great. They're so interesting. But again, a lot of the vocab in there is going to either be made up or not necessarily come up that often in sentences. Yes, Billy Go, he's great as well. He's really great as well. Talk to Me in Korean, that's another great self-learning book. And again, I like the website, How to Study Korean. Super great. Great explanations. How to Study Korean, I think, is the best, like, in-depth grammar explanations and tons of examples. Underrated, Miss Vicky. I'm not familiar with Miss Vicky, so I will have to go and check her out. There's so many resources out there. So again, the key is going to be, as you pick your resources, to make sure you use them in a structured way. Because again, language, it's like building a house. Oftentimes there needs to be some sort of flow for it to kind of make sense, right? You don't want to have, learn present tense and then learn this really complex grammar, like, have it make sense. I use Duolingo. Is it good for beginners? Yeah, it is. I think it's, as with anything, there's limitations and pros and cons to any resource. Apps tend to be a little bit they tend to be great for giving you a chance to do exercises. They don't tend to be as good with like explanation of why, because they just oftentimes don't have a mechanism for doing that. But yeah, nothing wrong with Duolingo. I think everybody's here probably has used Duolingo at least at one point. Okay, so again, pick your texts to have words that will come up every once in a while. Okay, got 2 more grammar points and then we'll move it on. Lingodeer is good too. Yes, there's so many great apps out there. There's like truly so many great resources. Yeah, this is why I didn't do a class on like a Korean language class. There's so many great Korean resources out there that, yes, I have my own ideas and yes, I will come up with my own because that helps me learn. But a lot of times we have resources, but nobody actually knows how to use them in the most effective manner. Nobody actually understands this part, right? Because this is the skills of how to learn a language. The apps and the books are like the actions, but this is like the methodology, if that makes sense. And it's really important, I think, to understand it, because then you understand, you can, again, this is the tools, and then you can build your own house in a way that works for you. Okay, moving on. Listening. This is like the fun one, right? Throw on some K-pop music, put on a Run BTS episode, and you're listening. And you are. That's true. That's essentially what this comes down to be. If you need to, you can go ahead and slow down the YouTube video. I don't think you can slow down things on Netflix, but you can slow things down as you need. Yeah, slow things down. And what else was I going to say along with that sentence? Oh, because what you need to be doing, this is like the key point, is actively listen, right? There's two forms of listening. There's active listening, and then there is passive listening. Passive listening is when it's just on in the background. You're not really paying much attention, but it's there. Active listening is when you sit and you're really like, okay, let me understand here. What are they saying? What are they trying to say? What am I hearing? That's active listening, right? Going 17, I tried to use Going 17, but with 13 members, they all talk over each other and then I can't hear anything. I gave up on learning from Going 17. I just watched Going 17 for fun and passive listening. Yeah, so be engaged. Don't zone out. If you have to pause it and take a break, do that. If you have to slow it down, do that. Again, helps if you start with a bit more basic material so that you can build on the foundations that you're laying for yourself. Don't do like the news. That's going to be really complex, really formal language, often about a really kind of like highbrow topic. Taman. I love Taman. Literally, I feel like Taman is my best friend. I want Taman to be my best friend. Yeah. So again, do your best to kind of slow down, keep it level appropriate, and then you can build. People have a tendency to jump to like more complex stuff than they're ready for. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're not going to set yourself back. You're just not going to be learning in the most effective way. Okay, what else do I have for you? Slow down the audio. Okay, here's another tip. Once you can also like do it reverse. Start it at full speed, see how much you understand. Listen to something again, because again, it never hurts to listen to things more than once. After you've listened to it full speed, after you've tried to comprehend as much as you can, go back and slow it down and see how well you did. See how good or how bad your comprehension was. So it's kind of like a reverse test. And then also it helps to vary your sources. Varying your sources is going to give you a wider range of accents, intonations, vocabulary, grammar uses, et cetera, et cetera. Having it all come from the same source or the same one K-pop idol is going to leave you a little bit restricted, right? Because we all have like words or phrases that we use maybe more than other people. And it also just keeps it interesting to have varied resources. The last one for listening, and this is particularly important for Korean, is dictation practice. Dictation is essentially, in case anybody's unfamiliar, dictation is when you hear something and you're able to transform what you hear into writing. This will help you with your spelling. This will help you with your reading. But essentially, it will just help you to understand the words that you're hearing because you are going to be listening so carefully. Dictation in Korean is extremely difficult because the spelling and the way it sounds don't necessarily go hand in hand. Or at least it can be really tricky to have them go hand in hand. But it is a great practice. So go ahead, again, pick simple sentences, pick one sentence at a time, listen to it a few times and write down the words that you think you're hearing, the grammar that you think you're hearing, write down what you think you're hearing. And that will be a great way to kind of, again, train your brain to recognize what's being said. Even better if after you've written it down, you can throw on the subtitles or the closed captioning at the bottom and then check, oh, I spelled this word wrong. Oh yeah, I've got that right, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Our last one, guys. The last, but the best. I heard listening to the news and mimicking them helps in pronunciation. What do you think? I think I actually disagree. It's not bad. They're obviously going to be pronouncing the words correctly, but I think all at least in English, and I know definitely in Korean, newscasters kind of take on a different air when they speak. Their pronunciation is very clear, but their intonation is kind of off. So it would be like, thanks, Jim. Back to the studio. We've just had this in from Mississippi that there is a huge storm going on and it is causing a lot of damage. Like the intonation tends to be a bit more newscastery. Did you like my news report? It tends to be a bit more newscastery than full on like the just normal kind of conversation. Also, GI, great idea. Picking a non-native speaker for dictation just to get the like the words out. It kind of sometimes helps if you have somebody who doesn't have a super strong native accent, so that you can kind of meet in the middle as you're getting used to dictation, as you're getting used to listening, right? Like, obviously, you need to get to the point where you fully understand native speakers, but that doesn't mean that you have to go from 0 to 100 all the way. If a non-native speaker is like a 25, go ahead and get yourself from 0 to 25 first. Then you can work on getting yourself from 25 to the rest of the 100, right? You don't have to do it all at once. Okay, speaking. This is, I think, the one that everybody wants to know the most, because it's how you like make connections and make friends. And again, it's one of the two forms of language output that there is. So how do we do this? The first thing I would say is start speaking from day one. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you narrate your shower. I don't care if you talk about the food that you're cooking. Narrate anything you can. I don't care if you're walking down the street and you go, dog, sky, tree, and there's no grammar involved at all. Start where you can. There is no point where you say, where you don't know enough to speak. If you know one word, you know enough to speak. And again, think about it from like the perspective of kids. When they're learning to talk, they do not start with full sentences. They start with mom and dad, maybe food. They start with such basic one word and then they build, right? I think a lot of times we have this mindset that if we don't know it all yet, we can't. If we aren't perfect at speaking yet, we can't. That is going to keep you stuck. It's not going to keep you progressing at all. So I highly recommend, as much as possible, speak as early as you can every day. I don't care if it's on your way to work. I don't care if it's while you go to the bathroom while you're at work. There's always time to speak. Also, this is the time where you are most likely going to make mistakes, because it's like instant, right? It's not like writing where you sit down and you can think for 12 minutes about how to write something or how to convey something. It's instant. And so this is where, again, you really gain that mastery. However, that does mean that there's going to be mistakes in the beginning, and that's okay. That's fine, and that's expected. Again, think of any child you have ever met. Love it. Do it to cats. Cats are not going to judge you. Think of any baby you've ever met. They do not speak with perfect grammar. They don't. It's not correct. But we all, as adults, understand what they mean and we go along with it. And then they eventually learn just by continuing to practice, right? The same thing is true with our speaking. So narrate your life, even if it's just one word. The next thing is immerse yourself as much as you can in the language. This is kind of fun. I'm thinking of creating a little thing called a mini immersion excursion, which by excursion, I don't mean that you have to go out and go on an excursion. I just mean an excursion from your normal native language life to a place where your target language is what is spoken all the time or listened to all the time. So maybe take a day or an hour or a weekend, whatever time you have, and make it where you are going to immerse yourself in the language as much as possible. The only thing you're going to listen to is your content in your target language. The only language you are going to speak is your target language. The only language you're going to think in as much as possible is your target language. This is going to feel really limiting at first, but it's actually a huge explosion forward the more often you do this. So again, sometimes you have to leave your house and you have to go to the grocery store. Obviously, you're then going to be surrounded again by your native language. But as much as possible, as you're at the grocery store, go ahead and continue to narrate and say, oh, these oranges are pretty. This cake looks delicious, as much as you can, right? It's not going to be perfect. You're not going to be in the country of the target language you're learning, but kind of transport yourself theoretically into a mini immersion excursion. The next thing to help yourself with speaking is to record yourself and listen back. This is going to go to an Asian store. Brilliant. There's always options. Go to eat the food of the country of your target language. Bonus points if the recipe is in the language you're learning. Fun, right? Record yourself speaking. This is how you are, again, going to check for any incorrect pronunciations, any kind of bad habits, things like that. Record yourself, listen back, say it again, listen back as much as you need. Again, I've said this before, so a lot of this stuff now that we're at the end is kind of already been said, so I'm speeding it up a little bit, but it's all information you've already heard. Focus on conversational phrases. Focus on the phrases that you are going to use the most. If you wanted to describe Harry Potter, you're going to be coming across a lot of vocab that just isn't necessarily going to come up in daily life. So the more that you focus on stuff that you will actually use, again, the more you're laying a solid foundation to build on, right? Because if you know the word for apple, and then there's a sentence and you see the word apple, you can build and say, okay, if that's apple, then we must be talking about food or eating of some kind. And okay, then we're probably maybe doing that in the present tense. Oh yeah, look, there's that present tense conjugation. Start with stuff that's going to be used, and you can kind of web out into other things from around that. The next thing is going to be join an online club or community. I will say it's potentially best if it's a native language speaker, but it doesn't always have to be. Already remembered apple. Look at that. Look at that. Making progress already. It doesn't always have to be a native speaker. A native speaker is not the be all end all, right? If you don't have access to a native speaker, if you can't find a native speaker, or you just don't feel ready to have full-blown conversations with a native speaker yet, start with other language learners. There's nothing wrong with that. Join a club, join a community, find a friend. It doesn't have to be, again, I think a lot of times we think, oh, if it's not with a native speaker, it's not worth learning. I actually think at the beginning, particularly in the beginning, it may be the opposite. The native speaker is going to be using complex grammar, words you don't know, maybe idioms or what are they called? Like phrases that are just not studied, that just native speakers tend to know. Maybe you start with a language learner who's also at your level, and you just practice over and over again saying, hi, how are you? I'm good. And you? That's where everybody starts with English. And then the next time you go, hey, how are you? I'm only okay. Why? I had a hard day at work. What was hard? Those are perfectly fine sentences. That's how you expand. You don't expand by saying, hi, how are you? Oh my gosh, today I had the absolute worst day. You're not going to even believe it. My boss was such a jerk, and that's not going to be helpful to you. If you're at the beginning levels, that's too much. Doesn't have to be a native speaker. Okay. Also, satsuri. Korean has this thing, all languages, I think, have dialects, accents, where if you're not careful, you may be learning a super accented or super dialecty form of the language you're learning, which you may not be aware of if you're not paying attention to who you're speaking with. Okay, I promise we're almost done. I'm going to say hold any questions for now because we are almost done. We're going to talk about a language study plan briefly. There's going to be a template in the ebook. Just a moment, let me allow this person into the room. There is going to be a template in the ebook for you to make your own language study plan, but please don't think that you need a specific template. Any sheet of paper will work just fine. But in order to do this, in order to now take all of the skills that we have learned today and actually put them into practice, there's 5 steps. It's not so scary. It's only 5 steps. We can do it. The first thing is going to be set your goals. Do you want to be able to have a conversation in a year from now? Do you want to be able to read Harry Potter in a year from now? Do you want to know 1,000 words in 100 days from now? There's no right or wrong here. Ideally, your goals are going to be specific. Learn Korean. Not specific. Very, very vague. And therefore, it becomes difficult to take actions to meet that goal, which I'll talk a little bit about in a second. You want them to be measurable. Again, be able to read Korean. Okay, are we talking about be able to read a menu, or are we talking about being able to read a full novel? Like the more specific, and again, measurable, like how are you going to track your progress? How will you know when, like, what do you count as reading in Korean? Then you want them to be something that is like authentic and true and important to you. You want them to be, oh my God, why am I forgetting the R? I didn't even write down notes for this because I know this. It was achievable. I'm so sorry. I'm blanking. Brain fart. That's okay. That's what happens when you do a class for 2 hours. We're skipping the R. Look it up. It's on Google. The T is timely, or have like some sort of time, have it be timed, so that again, you're kind of able to take it to step 2, which is time bound. Thank you. Which is taking it to step 2. If you have a specific goal that you want to reach in a certain amount of time, so I'm going to pick learn 1,000 words in 100 days. Break that down. Okay, if it's 100 days and I want to learn 1,000 words, that's 10 words a day. Or, okay, I want to read this book in 6 months. Let's pretend it's a long book. Okay, well, how many pages is that every day? How many pages is that a week? Break it down into what you need to do every month, week, day in order to reach that goal. Then you are going to like choose your resources. And in resources, I don't want to mean only materials. I want it to also mean like what skills are you going to implement, right? So if again, I'm going to pick the easy goal for the example. If your goal was learn 1,000 words in 100 days, you're going to want to say, okay, well, I need a vocab list. It's going to be in your inbox. I need a vocab list. I'm going to need to be writing sentences. So I'll probably have to set some time aside for writing so that I can remember the words better. Definitely going to need some sort of like flashcard, app, system, whatever. Think about the action steps and the tools and resources you will need in order to reach your goal. The next thing is going to be develop a study schedule. This does not have to be overwhelming. It can be really helpful, in fact, to start small. If you're not used to studying and you're not in the habit of studying, maybe let's not start with study 8 hours every Saturday. Let's not do that. That's relevant. Yes, I think you're right. R is relevant. That's not relevant. No, that's just setting yourself up for failure, right? To go to 0 to 8 hours a day on a Saturday is it's just not the thing, right? Maybe start with 10 minutes a day for a week. Then the week after that, you add to 20 minutes a day. Week after that, you go to half hour a day. You slowly build up, right? It's just like if you were starting to run, you wouldn't start with a marathon. You'd start with like maybe a quarter of a mile. And again, as much as you can build it into your routine already, the better. It doesn't all have to be like one block of time if that doesn't fit and work for you. Maybe it's, okay, I study vocab when I brush my teeth in the morning and in the night. I speak when I am in the shower. I am going to spend then 20 minutes a day writing. And that's like your actual set aside writing time. Maybe that's all you can do, right? And again, you want to be making sure that in your study schedule, you're incorporating all of the components of language. Some of them, like alphabet and pronunciation, will kind of drop off once you kind of get comfortable. But the other components, you kind of want to vary your schedule. Not only does it keep it interesting, but it helps you become well-rounded and actually fluent, right? You need all of those parts of language in order to be fluent. And the last thing is going to be track your progress. There is no way for you to know what's working and what's not if you have no idea what you're doing. And so again, you don't want it to be too results based, as we talked in the beginning about having a growth mindset. Are you showing up every day? Are you enjoying it? Are you making progress in the sense of like, maybe you look at a sentence you wrote at the beginning of the month, and then you try and write a similar sentence a month later. Is it easier? Is it more correct? Did you make the same mistakes? Those kinds of things. Would it be wise to make my own tests and quizzes? Sure. Why not? Spoiler alert, I'm planning on coming up with tests and quizzes for myself, for my classes, because I have like a midterm coming up. Those are going to be made available to you guys too. It will kind of be chunked a little bit differently. You may be starting a bit in like the middle of language learning, but doesn't mean it won't be helpful. And again, I just think I've really enjoyed making resources. I'm not a drawer. I'm not an artist. I'm not necessarily great with like visual effects, but I have found that I've really enjoyed writing, and I have really enjoyed like formatting stuff, which I guess is me. Is that art? Am I liking art? It's new to me. I'm very confused and bewildered by it, but I'm very happy. So yeah, you're going to want something. Is Learn Korean 101 channel on YouTube helpful? Probably. Like I said, I'm not familiar with that one specifically, but there's a ton of great resources out there, and all of them have their pros and cons. Okay. That being said, hit me up, guys. What questions do you have? I gave you a ton of information, like literally 2 full hours of information. Go ahead, type out your questions. I'm going to turn a light on because it's starting to get a little bit dark in here. One moment. Okay. What questions do you have for me? Also, if you don't have any questions, I have a question for you. And that is, was this helpful? How was this? What was your favorite part? This is my first time teaching a language class like this. So please let me know your feedback, the good, the bad, and the ugly, preferably if it's bad and ugly, just phrase it in a kind way, of what you would like to see more of, because I am genuinely want to be as helpful as I can. Everything. I enjoyed everything. Oh, I'm so glad. Taking notes nonstop, really useful information on how to structure learning, very clear and practical. 2 hours felt like 2 minutes. Oh, good, guys. Yes, there is definitely a recording. This is like 2 hours long. I have no idea how long it's going to take to upload to YouTube. Also, I have to clean up my lunch, which I just left all over the kitchen because I only had a limited amount of time. So I need to do some things before I upload it. But yes, there will be a replay. And again, let me just phrase that again. I'm keeping an eye out for your questions in the comments. It seems like it was really good. Don't be afraid to ask any questions as well. But while you're doing that, coming to your inbox will be a 1,000 Korean words and this replay. That is going to be coming up. Again, let me drop it in here. Let me drop it in here to everybody again. There is the ebook, which has all of this information and even more written out, which is on pre-sale right now because I just need a couple more. Probably, honestly, will only take me like a couple more hours, but I want to give myself time. Can I make a study plan and email it to you for your review? Sure. I have also a better idea. What if I did like another one of these where people brought their language study plans and we reviewed them all live so that you can get everybody's feedback? Not that everybody would review and give you your feedback. What I mean is like you could learn from other people's. I'm starting with Italian and Spanish. Any word of advice you'd like to give me? One, Italian is a beautiful language. It's my personal favorite. Any word of advice? Let me think. I kind of feel like all of the advice I gave was kind of in this class. Like start with the most common words, practice them, practice your pronunciation. Italian and Spanish are extremely similar. So make sure that you're practicing your pronunciation for them separately. Because I never really studied Spanish, I just picked it up by immersion when I was living there to teach English. I speak my Spanish with an Italian accent, and everybody is very confused because they know that I'm American, and they're like, what is this accent? So focus on learning the two accents separately. Okay, Claudia has a question. I have a question or idea to everyone, like we're here to learn. Would it be better if we make a group and discuss what we are learning, and next day we take questions about them and then each take quizzes? I think that's a great idea. This is something that's been on my mind, and maybe I can ask your guys' feedback right now. Would it be useful for me to kind of initiate some kind of community or some kind of, the reason why I haven't done this is because I'm not exactly sure what I want it to look like. And to be fair, I also don't want it to take up like 12 hours of my day every day. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a Facebook group right after this. I'll create a Facebook group. And maybe that can be, because Facebook groups are better than it's not like a Zoom room where it's limited time. People can come with questions and support and stuff like that. And also maybe we do like a weekly live in the Facebook group or something like that. Discord would be appropriate. Discord would be good too. Okay. Facebook group. Let's start with that. That'll be kind of like the community page that we go for. I'll add that to the email too. Coming after this, there's going to be an email with a Facebook group, 1,000 most common words in Korean, and the replay, the whole thing that we're here to do. And then also if you want to you can meet up with people who are your own age. Now this is becoming you guys helping me. I had another idea. I have a lot of ideas, but I don't have as much time to implement them as I would like. I have an idea of doing like a book club. And by book club, I don't necessarily mean this would probably be about Korean, but maybe I'll throw in a book or two about language learning. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that the book is in Korean. It could be about Korea. It could be about K-pop, but some sort of weekly, deep dive discussion. I can facilitate and ask the questions, send out reading materials, maybe on a news article or something like that. And then we all kind of discuss I wonder why Korea is like that or whatever. Okay. I insane positive responses to that too. All of this cannot happen all at once, everyone. I don't have time. But okay, I will do that. The Facebook group I can get on right away. And thank you so much. I'm so glad that everybody is enjoying this. Oh my gosh, yes, go to sleep. You're in Brazil. Instagram group. I think Facebook group is better for community. What does everybody think? Because in my opinion, my thing on Instagram is you can't like search people's comments. So if somebody has, because I'm sure somebody's going to be like, hey, can somebody explain past tense? Somebody goes and answers the question, but then somebody has to like ask that question every time. Discord, I'm not as familiar with, but I can get familiar with it. With learning Korean, is it better to learn polite form of everything and then learn the relaxed, or is it fine to learn both at the same time? I think it's actually better to learn both at the same time because the instances of when you need to use them are so separate. If you only pick one, pick the like more formal, you're never gonna Hello Cal is a better place. Even one of the Korean person recommended that as well. Okay, cool. I'll keep an eye for that too. I would say it's better to keep things formal. You're not going to offend anybody by accidentally being too polite. Nobody has ever been offended by somebody being too polite. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, then give me like, I'll send out the email tomorrow with the upload because it's probably going to take hours anyway. And then I'll do some research tonight about what form of community is best. And then I'll start laying the groundwork for a book club. Let's call it a discussion club because it may not always be full books. I don't know if anybody wants to read like a full book on every aspect of Korean life. Maybe like article discussion, topic based. We can all share our ideas. It's just discussion. There's no right or wrong. I will kick you out if you are rude or mean. Kick you out. But yeah, I think that'll be really fun. Okay. Any final questions? Okay. I think with that being said, I'm going to, oh, new message. Somebody got, okay, no question. I was going to say got in right under the buzzer. With that, everyone, this class is going to end. And I will see you all at the next one. Have a great day. Bye.